Hello friends, welcome back to Cosmopolitan Cornbread. So I'm out here in the garden today fertilizing pretty much everything out here. If the weatherman is right, we are supposed to get a lot of rain this week. And normally when I fertilize, I use a water-soluble fertilizer. One of my favorites is Jack's. I'll also use like the fish fertilizer, the Alaskan fish fertilizer, which smells atrocious, but it works wonderfully. Things along those lines. But because we're supposed to get a lot of rain, I didn't want to put something in there that might just get washed right out of the soil or diluted so quickly that the plants don't receive it all. The rain is supposed to start later today. And so I'm using a granulated fertilizer. It's just this Espoma organic tomato tone tomato and vegetable foods, kind of a good all-purpose sort of fertilizer. And so I'm just kind of sprinkling a little bit of this all around pretty much everything. Just to kind of preemptively feed everything. Because if we do get a lot of rain, you know, that's not great for the beds, you know. But I am happy that I've seen some pollinators in the garden this year. You may recall that last year I was a tad bit concerned because I was just not seeing pollinators. You know, I talked about how, you know, in the springtime, early in the garden season, I have this comfrey that comes up, and the comfrey is usually humming with bees. So many, I can hear the plants before I even get into the garden. And how last year there was like nothing. It was just silence. It was so eerie. But now, granted, it's not like I was used to seeing in Alabama in my previous gardens. But this year, I am seeing many more pollinators, which makes me so happy. So I'm still watering by hand. I have not had a chance to get my drip line put in. I've got to do a little bit of maintenance on it. There were some lines that got broken last year. Just got caught by weed eaters and things like that. So I'm hand watering for the time being until I can, you know, take an afternoon and get out here and work on those. Oh, there's some more bees. So I've had lots of people continuing to ask about the house hunt and how it's going with us looking for our Alabama home. And it's going. I'll say that. We are once again under contract on a house. You know, it has been such a challenge between, you know, putting in offers, being way outbid, far above asking price over and over again, getting houses under contract, the houses like horrendously failing inspection. So it's been a challenge. But like I said, we are once again under contract for a house. The inspection will be in a couple of days. And so I am praying that this is the one. You know, I've been praying all along that we end up exactly where the Father wants us to. And, you know, the fact that it's taken a little bit longer than we would have liked to find a house, that's just the way it is. Of course, it can be disappointing if you don't get a house that you think is absolutely perfect. But, you know, I've been saying all along, I trust the Father. I trust the Father that we'll end up exactly where we need to. All according to His will. And, you know, when you pray, when you say, Lord willing, you know, if the Father wills it, you know, etc., that's not just lip service. You gotta mean it. You know, it's always funny when you have volunteer plants coming back in a garden, sometimes you never quite know what is actually volunteer or what is a weed. And there will be little seedlings coming up, and I'll be looking at it going, is that a weed or is that something else coming back? Sometimes that can be a challenge. I've definitely got a few volunteers coming back this year from last year. And there's a big one right here on the outside of this bed. If you can see it right there, there are several dill plants coming back. So I did not need to plant any dill this year because there's some there, there's some over there, there's all sorts of dill. So even though it's not inside the bed, I'm just going to let it be happy right there. There's also a little bit of Tulsi basil down there, keeping it company. So in this bed over here, now you can see I've already had to start clipping up my tomatoes, or several of the tomatoes over here, to have them stay along the trellis. These things are doing great. But we've definitely got some volunteers in this bed. So right here, I've got some basil that I planted, but right over here, I've got all sorts of little basil plants popping up. Well, that one's not basil. That I didn't plant. All sorts of little happy little baby basil plants. So we'll just kind of let those do their thing. I've got right here, I've got a random tomato plant coming up of some sort. Here's a zinnia flower coming back. Here's another zinnia over here. That kind of looks, there's a zinnia there too. I didn't have to plant any of those. They just came right back on their own. So there's all sorts of little baby volunteers. There's basil and another zinnia right over there on the outside of the bed. But again, I'll just leave those be. Oh, there's a little earthworm. Hello, Mr. Worm. I am seeing lots of worms in the garden this year. That is a sign that I love, love, love to see. Here's a random bean plant growing in the walkway too. But I'll have to try and get that one to go up the trellis. Down here, there, and over there, I planted some Kajari melons to go up the trellis here. Of course, all the tomatoes. We've got some zinnias that I planted, you know, because I love to mix the flowers and the food. The flowers make the pollinators happy, and then the pollinators make me happy. Here we've got some hollyhock. Now, I planted this last year, but it never flowered. And this year, it's established itself, and it looks like it is getting ready to flower. So that'll be exciting to see. The comfrey, of course, doing amazing, as always. I have chopped this down already this year. Laid all of the leaves. You can see the dried up leaves all throughout. I had all of the soil completely covered in comfrey leaves just from this cluster right here. And, you know, all of those nutrients from those leaves break down and they go into the soil. And so it's great to have comfrey in your garden. In this garden, I planted it on every row. I have it at the end of this one, and I laid leaves all throughout that one, that bed. I have it over at the end of that bed, or that row. And then I was going to also plant some at the far end of each row. So we'd have like basically comfrey for every bed. But I hadn't gotten to that, but that's okay. The pollinators have been loving the comfrey, as you can see. There's little bitty ones, there's honeybees, there's bumblebees. We've got all sorts of bees. You know, there are some things that I'm definitely going to miss about this place. I highly doubt any house that we move to in Alabama is going to have the kind of pantry that I have in this house. This pantry is pretty substantial. You may remember when I was first setting it up how there was a secret wall that made it look smaller than it was. And there was a shelving unit that rolled out and you had like a hiding place back there. And while that idea was wonderful, I removed the shelving unit, or units, there was 2 of them, and installed metal shelving in there that was nice and sturdy. But it is a substantial pantry. Most houses nowadays, their idea of a pantry is like a couple cabinets. So that is one thing I will say I am definitely going to miss. I will likely have to create a pantry in my next home. Now, I did that in the Alabama house. I did that in the laundry room because it was a good enough laundry room that there was space where I could create a pantry also. And I did that. And I made all my own custom shelving. I did a can rack and all that stuff. I actually have a video where I talk about all that. I'll link it up here or down below or something if you want to check that out. So as long as there's a space where I can create a pantry of sorts, then I can make one, you know. As long as there's a space, I can make a pantry. So even if it didn't come with one, we'll make it happen. Now, y'all might see that mason jar sitting over there with some yucky looking water in it. I am already having to pull squash bugs off of my squash plants, specifically my zucchini. Now, I've got some rampicante squash over here, which I'll show you here in just a second, or I'll overlay it here for you to see. So I've got the rampicante squash, and until now, I haven't seen any over there. But they've been all over my little fledgling zucchini plants. And so I have been having to pluck them off and toss them into the jar of water. You know, because really that's kind of the best way to get rid of or control squash bugs. Have I been saying that wrong this whole time? I don't know. But when you come out here and you water, they don't much care for the water. So they try to climb up away from the water, which makes them easy to spot. And at this very moment, I see a few of them. Gotcha. And see, now that I've seen these in the garden, I'm going to have to check the underside of all my leaves, because that's where they like to lay their eggs. But this is one of the reasons, while a drip line is great, I do love hand watering as well, because it gives you a close-up view of what's going on in your garden, you know? If you just trust your drip line all the time, you're not getting right there close and personal with what's going on in your garden, and it becomes really easy for pests to get out of control and take you by surprise. You might think you're good, and then it's like, oh, wait a minute. I haven't been out here in a little while. What's going on? So while hand watering does take time, I actually prefer it over the drip line. But I'll use the drip line when I don't have a lot of time, or, you know, it's just been really, really dry and I want to make sure I get a good deep soaking. But I enjoy the hand watering. And right now I'm just kind of spraying the plants all over the place to, you know, rinse off any fertilizer dust that got on the leaves, but then also like get a bunch of water all over the place so that the squash bugs will climb to the top, like I see over here on my lavender. Let's see if I can help get you to see this. So check this out. Can you see them? They're all over. Look, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's another one coming up the drip line hose. So I'm going to snag all these, throw them in my yucky water. Hello, Mr. Spider. I'm sorry if you were planning on eating these. I'm beating you to it. Whew, nasty. And I'm going to say this too. If you ever look around in your garden and you find a squash bug, keep looking because they're almost always in pairs. Because they're wanting to multiply in your garden. When I move back to Alabama, I'm going to have to take some of these Egyptian walking onions. I love these things. They grow the flowering head like most onions do. And then those heads turn into little baby onion plants. They get heavy, they fall down, and they start a whole new cluster of onions. You can see right here with this one, how it came up from down there, where there was a head, the baby onions were growing, and then one of those took off and started a whole new one. You can see that flower there. And you can see this cluster here, all these little baby onions. I've got one over here. This was a nice, good Egyptian walking onion. And it's falling down here. We've got all these little baby onions started. So speaking of volunteers, this is a Brussels sprout plant. And let me tell you something. Here's what's really interesting. I have never, to my knowledge, ever planted Brussels sprouts in this garden. However, last year, this bed is the one that I was using for compost. And I threw Brussels sprouts scraps into this bed. So one of the scraps grew roots, and now I have a Brussels sprout plant volunteering. And there's one other thing that I want to show you. And if you listen very carefully, you probably hear a very angry bird. And I'm going to show you why. I did not get a chance. I was out here the other day, and one of my tasks being out here was to clean up all of this stuff right here. These 2 tubs of grow bags that I needed to wash and put away. I have a tub here of garden trash that I've been collecting. But as I walked over here, I heard a noise. And then I heard an angry bird, and I'm going to show you why. And why I now cannot move this. Because right in there, if you can see it, are eggs. A bird has created a nest in the grow bags. And speaking of birds, another thing that I'm really going to miss about this homestead, one of the many things that I'm going to miss is a particular bird. It is a nocturnal bird, and it has a very distinctive call. It kind of reminds me of a whippoorwill, but it's not a whippoorwill. And I hear it all the time in the spring, in the summer, and early fall. And just this morning, as a matter of fact, they were going to town. And this bird is called a Chuck-will's widow. Chuck-will's widow, because that's exactly what it sounds like it's saying. Chuck-will's widow, Chuck-will widow, Chuck-will widow, Chuck-will widow. That is like just the sound of the evenings and mornings here. And I'm going to miss that. I'd never heard that bird before moving here. There's lots of birds that I have familiarized myself with, but I've never heard that one before we moved here. And it's just such a beautiful call. Oh, and by the way, these 2 grapevines are covered in grape blossoms this year. absolutely covered in them. I hope somebody gets to harvest a whole bunch of grapes.